More large companies are boycotting Russia following its invasion of Ukraine. Hollywood studios, Netflix, Disney, and Sony have paused productions and releases in the country, while clothing brand H&M suspended sales. Russian vodka sales are taking a hit as well as supermarkets across the world stop sales in protest. The UN General Assembly passed a resolution condemning Russia's invasion, demanding it withdraw troops from Ukraine immediately. The U.S. and 140 other nations supported the resolution, while 35 abstained, including China. 5 nations voted against. And the EU has excluded 7 Russian banks from SWIFT in the latest round of sanctions hitting the country. SWIFT is the dominant messaging system that supports global financial transactions. The banks must wind down operations by March 12th. So here to discuss this is Alex Ward. He is a national security reporter for Politico and author of the National Security Daily newsletter. Alex, thanks for joining us. So the EU stopped short of including those that handle energy payments from removing them from the SWIFT system. Can you explain further why they made that decision?
Well, the reason comes down to mostly 2. The first is they do not necessarily want to curtail the amount of energy that comes from Russia, right? These countries are, especially in Europe, are incredibly reliant on energy. And so if they are unable to make those payments, then you could imagine that they're not going to have access to that energy. And it is still winter over there. It is still cold. And then, of course, they would be looking for new energy sources. The other is there's no real appetite also in the Biden administration to see major energy sanctions as of this moment, because for the same reason, and President Joe Biden has been very open about this, he doesn't want to see increased prices at the pump, especially with inflation and some economic woes. And so as of this moment, what you're seeing is putting some pain on banks in Russia, putting some pain on segments of the energy sector, but really not sanctioning it hard.
And of course, the X factor in all of this, when it comes to whether or not these sanctions are going to work, has to do with China. And, you know, whether or not China will intervene. They're not participating in the sanctions. The country of China is not participating in the sanctions. We know that China has already expressed some support for Russia's security concerns and refuses to call this an invasion. What sort of impact could China have on the consequences of the sanctions?
Well, China is now Russia's major lifeline. However, Vladimir Putin seemed to calculate that Xi Jinping would be his partner in all of this and could somehow make the Russian economy whole after this massive sanctions regime. That's just not going to happen. The math doesn't add up. The money lost from what is just being sanctioned and from the lack of business now with Western nations and industry is not something that China can make up. That said, you know, when we're talking about Russia being disconnected from the global economy, it mostly is, but that's mostly from the Western economy, the US, Canada, European. There's still many other countries that are still doing business with Russia, and China is going to be first among them.
Is it true that China and Russia had kind of been working on a workaround when it comes to SWIFT? And could this be almost, in a little way, sort of a come up for China, because this would be a good time to probably purchase really cheap Russian oil and gas?
It would be a good time to buy, I guess, if you're in China. However, you are going to start seeing Russia failing to make payments, you know, respond to, multiple debts that it has, even finance its own economy and keep food on the shelves in supermarkets. So this is not really the time, I guess, if you're China, to think that Russia's a great investment. Although if you want to sort of do a going out of business sale, this might be the right time. As for SWIFT, I mean, there are certain workarounds. I mean, not that since SWIFT isn't fully cut off, there are certain industries that still have access. There are ways for Russia and China to get money here. But at the end of the day, you're starting to see the noose tighten around the Russian economy and cutting off SWIFT from pretty much every angle. There are reports now, and my own reporting, that it looks like there'll be further sanctions down the line, perhaps SWIFT, perhaps something else. So it's only going to be a worst investment, let's say, and China's going to be hard pressed to somehow keep Russia afloat.
Yeah, if the ruble continues to tumble and you don't have access to other types of currency, it's going to be really hard to survive in Russia. Alex, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.